The stock market saw some pretty good moves in both directions today, and we saw some of the recent powerhouses like Nvidia and SMCI just keep on marching higher. It's crazy to say this, but Nvidia is almost at that $700 price point, which is just crazy to even say. And while that's awesome, we even saw a very popular growth stock, Palantir, have a pretty good earnings reaction so far. So in this video, we're going to talk about all the important things to know in the market right now, some solid setups for tomorrow, and some other things that you'll want to keep in mind for the rest of the week. There are some pretty solid setups brewing right in front of us. So with that being said, Tom, let's get right into it.
Yeah, first things first, the market actually started falling down quite a bit this morning. Whenever we first opened up, the SPY was falling off. I saw a few stocks out there like Apple, Microsoft. They were kind of shaky. Microsoft had a pretty big drop in its own right, but we go look at the powerhouses that have been keeping the market higher lately, and one of those big ones is Nvidia. They were up 4.79%, like you said, nearing $700. That is a huge, huge level, and I know a lot of people have been looking at all of these AI stocks lately, and SMCI has been one that's like lingering in the background right now, up 14% on the day. And you go out to the daily chart and you zoom out with this stock. And I mean, Mike, it's very rare that we have a stock that goes straight up like this. I mean, that is like literally blasting straight to the upside. So I love this. It's actually almost to $700 too, just like Nvidia. So we'll see. Maybe it's a race, right? Let us know in the comments who's going to hit $700 first.
Yeah, exactly. And when we look at these recent powerhouse stocks, the best way to play them is ride that short-term momentum. Just don't get too caught up in the hype. Like, they are moving in such great ways in the short term, and these options are literally moving up by hundreds of percent on a daily basis. Just make sure, that when you trade them, that your risk is managed, because they are very volatile stocks, which is a good thing as long as you can keep your risk managed. So just keep that in mind, have fun with them, but again, keep your risk managed with them, because they are definitely crazy. But shifting over into another pretty crazy stock, Palantir reported earnings in after hours today, and so far it's been pretty good, Tom. What's the story with this one?
Yeah, doing fantastic in after hours, up to $19 here. And whenever I go look at the numbers overall, it's great. They increased revenue 20% year over year, which I thought was great. You can see the EPS came in right around expectations or slightly beat, depending on which analyst you're looking at. Revenue actually beat slightly too. So first things first, whenever I look at the EPS, I see it didn't really beat by a lot. The revenue also did not really beat by too much. But whenever I start scrolling down through the article, one thing that I thought was awesome is that they're known for their defense work with the U.S., but they said that their commercial revenue grew 70% year over year, and their customer count or commercial customer count increased 55% year over year. So I thought that was pretty big. And overall, they're having good growth, right? But they are a growth stock. I thought they could have had better numbers, but I'll say this, I'll take the good move. That is one hell of a jump there.
Absolutely, and Palantir, at least for me, is one of those companies that I don't plan on selling anytime soon. I really like what they're doing, and I can easily see myself holding this stock for like 10 years or longer. It's great to see it blasting in after hours right now, and like most recent earnings setups, Palantir has a lot of momentum. So when tomorrow morning comes along, don't be afraid to ride that imbalance of buying or even selling pressure. But just like we talked about with Nvidia and SMCI, just make sure that no matter what happens, you don't get too caught up in the hype. But in the meantime, ride the momentum and enjoy the imbalance of buying and selling pressure.
Yeah, definitely. And these stocks are starting to go crazy. We're seeing a lot of volatility, and we've been talking about this as we've been going through earnings season quite a bit, Mike, and there's still even more volatile stocks set to report on the week. But going back to Palantir, that's going to be great tomorrow. Like if it could break above 1930 in pre-market, and like let's say that it's blasting up in pre-market, right? Maybe look at $20 then overhead. That might be a good resistance area, nice whole dollar mark. So keep some of those areas in mind whenever you're looking at Palantir. Going out to the daily chart, Mike, it's up in after hours, but I'll say this, it's been this high multiple times over the past year. And whenever I look, there's a big resistance around that 20 to 2150 spot. So definitely be a little bit aware of that as you trade tomorrow. But other than that, keep following that momentum, because as we saw with Meta and a couple other big earnings moves, they can have great continuations. Like Meta, whenever the market opened the next day, actually continued up another like 6%, which was pretty good considering it ran up as much as it did.
Absolutely, and the options blasted higher too, Tom. Like the options ran up another 300 to 400% depending on the strike. So keep that in mind and keep a close eye on not only Palantir tomorrow, but all of the other earnings stocks we have for the week. So basically looking at this week's lineup, we have a lot on the schedule. We have Snapchat, Spotify, Ford, Enphase, and Chipotle tomorrow, plus a bunch of others that I didn't even name. As we go through the week, we have a bunch of other stocks like PayPal, Disney, ARM, Affirm, Pinterest, Alibaba, a bunch of stocks, right? I can't even name them all, but we definitely have we have another loaded earnings week.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like we talked about yesterday, there's a few favorites out there that are going to be watched very closely, like in the AI game. I know that ARM is pretty big here. PayPal will be a big watch. I know a lot of people are also looking at Enphase here as well to see how their growth is continuing. Obviously, they've been all over the place being a solar company. But, Mike, it's a big week for earnings. And so far, we're already kicking it off in a good note with Palantir. So hopefully we continue to see these good moves coming out of the growth stocks, because actually, I'll say this earnings season is more exciting for me with the growth stocks than it even is for stocks like Apple or Nvidia or stocks like that, because I think a lot of these growth stocks are still very low, like PayPal that reports later in the week. And if they have a good report, it might start to finally get this stock up and out of lows, and it could be a great opportunity for the longer term with shares down here or even cash secured puts down around like $57 or $60.
There we go. So keep a close eye on individual stocks over the next couple days. That is where almost all of the opportunity has been over the past couple weeks. And again, I'm looking at you, Meta and Nvidia, and even SMCI, because those types of stocks have been running the show. And what's interesting is we're actually coming into a time of the year that isn't the best for the stock market. Basically, over the past 30 years, February has been the third worst month for the S&P 500. And for this chart right here, we can see each February going all the way back to 1994. And, there were definitely some good Februaries, but at the same time, there were also a handful of nasty ones.
I'm actually really surprised that February was this negative so many times, Mike. Like, I can't believe it's the third worst month out of the entire year. And then just to add insult to injury, we're also in an election year, which there's some pretty bad stats for that too that we'll go over in a second. But there's definitely a lot of bad Februaries here. I would say this, like counting them, it looks fairly even, right? But whenever you do get those down months in February, sometimes they seem to be pretty brutal. Like in 2020, 2001, 2009, like, man, there were some pretty bad drops on this chart.
No doubt. And then, Tom, you mentioned the election year aspect as well. And as we look into data related to that, we can see that February, by many metrics, since 1950, and even if you just look over the past 20 years and the past 10 years, isn't all that. But it's especially bad during an election year. So that's worth noting as well. But just because we have these market stats, that doesn't mean that this February is going to fall off the face of the earth for the stock market, right? Like, it's just worth noting that a lot of times February isn't the best month, which can be a good thing if you trade it correctly, but it could also not matter at all depending on the stocks that you're actually trading. For example, the overall market can have a red February, but let's say some growth stocks like Palantir or, maybe some of the other stocks that we have reporting earnings this week can have a great February. So it all depends on how you position yourself, but either way, it is important to just be aware of the overall situation, I guess you could say, happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's always good to have statistics on your side, right? And like you said, though, it's not always going to play out that way. Like right now, it's a pretty weird year so far. At least I think so. The way Nvidia, SMCI, Meta, all these stocks are running, if they keep breaking highs, there's no way we're going to fall in February. So we'll have to see what happens, Mike. But with the way that these stocks are moving and how volatile they are, we might start to see some pullbacks come in. And if we do, they'll probably be pretty violent to the downside, just like we've had these nice violent upside moves. So So keep that in mind. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to see these stats, Mike, because I know a lot of people out there really appreciate these. And if you do, let us know in the comments down below.
I like how you described the recent movement, Tom. Violent to the upside, but it's true. Like, you look at NVIDIA right now, and to see a move from $475 a share up to like $700 over the course of like a little bit over a month, like, that's pretty violent. And even if you look at SMCI, that's even more so. Like, since the beginning of the year, SMCI went from like $280 a share up to like 665. Like, that is a crazy move. And the good news is that ride that short-term momentum. You know, it's like, even though the move's crazy and even though the stock's overbought, you know, there's nothing stopping it from getting more overbought in the short term. It's just, again, like I said multiple times, just make sure your risk is managed. But besides that, enjoy the time where the bulls are running the show.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people, Mike, they're out there and they're like, well, how do I really trade this? And I think that a really smart thing to do right now is to just ride that intraday momentum, like you said. I think right now a big mistake that a lot of traders are going to be making over the next couple months is just assuming that these stocks will continue. And I've seen a lot of people talking about buying like longer term call options and stuff up here at these highs. Guys, keep it short term. These stocks are volatile. They're running. The short term opportunities are there. But just imagine a month down the road, these stocks might not be as hot as they are now. So keep that in mind.
Yep. All right, Tom, well, let's get into the fun stuff for today, which are some setups. So one stock I'm watching pretty closely is JD, and this is one of those crazy Chinese stocks that has been taken to the woodshed over the past couple of years. It has been getting absolutely pummeled, and the Chinese government is, you know, tapping the mat now, saying, you know, we can't take it anymore, and they're really getting pretty desperate to pump their markets higher. And by the way, guys, stick around to the end of the video because we also have a pretty interesting big money trade kind of related to this whole situation. So stick with us. But anyways, looking at JD, you know, the Chinese government is doing a lot to pump their markets higher now. The stock is super oversold, and we're starting to see some other Chinese stocks start to try to reverse the massive amount of bearish sentiment that has covered them over the past couple of years. With that being said, I think there's a great risk to reward playing these stocks to the upside. Basically, I'm just looking for some positive price action and some strong bullish momentum, kind of like what we saw today from Open. So I would love to see JD get back to like that $22.80 area, again with some solid momentum. And if it can get there, I think, you know, there's a decent shot that this one can make a run higher.
Yeah, it looks really nice in the short term. It's having some good bounces off that lower support. Whenever you go out to a daily, JD is just so low right now, Mike, and it's coming up off of this higher low, you could say. So I like the way it's setting up short term. Maybe we could see a nice jump out of the China stocks. I'm actually looking at my next play, which is AMD, and I'm actually looking at it to the downside. They had a very weak day today, on a day where NVIDIA and a lot of other nice chip stocks are running. I saw even Qualcomm was moving up today. AMD ended up dipping down pretty hard, down 1.93%, and they're actually rejecting at a key level, which is 175. That was a humongous support today. It gave out, and now the stock is rejecting off of there, heading into tomorrow. If you see more momentum at open, definitely watch this one to the downside. Check this out, guys. On Bookmap, there was over 200,000 shares stacking up at 175 towards the end of the day today on AMD. I assume that those shares are still going to be there tomorrow, so watch for that to be a huge resistance, and if we keep rejecting, look at that downside selling pressure tomorrow. We could not have found this huge level without the Bookmap. This really gives us a lot of conviction on this resistance, and it's always good to have that x-ray vision out there.
There we go. All right, another stock I'm watching pretty closely is Microsoft. So again, it's a powerhouse stock, but it doesn't have that same level of, I guess we'll say what Tom said earlier in the video, violent upward price action like some of these stocks like NVIDIA and SMCI. But Microsoft is, still pretty overextended to the upside, but it's starting to see a little bit more sellers, come into play here. So I am watching this one to the downside. I would love to see a break below like 404, again with some like pretty consistent bearish price action. And if we can see that tomorrow, I will look to play this one in a bearish way.
Yeah, I really like that support there. I'll definitely be watching that one as well. It's setting up pretty similar to AMD on the overall move there. Mike, my next stock is going to make a few people angry out there, but I'm looking at Coinbase, and it's not the way people are thinking. I'm looking at it to the downside. It was down 9.2% today, actually leading my watch list to the downside. I know Coinbase has taken a little bit of flack lately. I know some of these other Bitcoin stocks and the Bitcoin ETFs have been stealing some of the volume away from some of these other stocks like Coinbase. But whenever I look at Coin, it's just a pretty negative short-term move. So if we continue with that negative momentum tomorrow, we get down under like 116, I will continue to look at puts. There was a lot of momentum today, and I'll be looking for that continuation.
Tom, I think you're going to catch a break with this one. If you were talking about Coinbase in a bearish way towards the end of December, you would have gotten flamed. But since that point, the stock has pulled back quite a bit, and a lot of the euphoria associated with the crypto stocks has died down, at least in the short term. So I think you're going to catch a break this time, at least. So
yeah, hopefully. I mean, man, I can't believe how much hype there was with these stocks. Like, you go out to the daily on Coinbase in December, you're right. I would have gotten flamed so hard. Of course, though, now that it fell, it's okay. So.
Oh, that's too funny. So keep a close eye on that one going forward. But Tom, let's jump right into tomorrow's momentum plays. And with the first one, we have Tesla to the downside.
Tesla had a huge downside move today. It actually bounced right off of 175 and then broke back above 180. So I'll be looking for a move below 180. Let's say that happens very early on. Then I'll be looking for a move below 175. So there's like two levels to look for. But I'll say this, 175 is huge. Again, we go to Bookmap. 578,000 shares stacked up there end of day. That has to be a big level.
No doubt. All right, good stuff there. With the next one, we have UVXY to the upside.
Yeah, UVXY, if the market starts dipping, this could be awesome. Make it break back above $7.60.
All right, and then with the last one, we have Meta for both directions.
Meta, yeah, pretty, I'd say, sour move by them today overall. They did not continue off that hype from last week. But then again, the hype was so much. If they fall under 452, go ahead and look at puts to the downside. That's right around support from last week. Now, if they're able to get back above intraday support right around 468, then look at calls.
Sounds good. So we have the upside level for calls and we have the downside level for puts, and that is for Meta. Don't forget about the upside level with UVXY, and then don't forget about the downside level with Tesla. These three stocks are only potential trades tomorrow if they break the levels Tom listed. Essentially, we're looking for big breaks through the levels, and then we are looking to capitalize off of the imbalance of short-term momentum. So keep a close eye on these three stocks heading into tomorrow. But as we hinted at earlier in the video, we have a pretty big money trade from today, and we are looking at ticker symbol FXI. So I bet a lot of you guys already know about this ETF, but for those of you who don't, basically it follows a bunch of Chinese stocks. Again, they've been struggling quite a bit over the past couple years, and today we saw a big money trader put $4.5 million into the FXI $22.85 strike call options. Kind of a tongue twister there for January 17th of 2025. So you can see it on the screen right now. Basically, the big money is going long on FXI or Chinese stocks, and I can't really blame them given the current risk reward that is being presented. These call options are close to the money. There's a lot of time to them. And again, it's a pretty big money trade worth around $4.5 million. So very interesting here. And this is one of those setups that I think everyone should keep a close eye on going into the rest of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, there's always that there's always that fear with China, right? Like, China's a big outlier. We don't know whether or not they're going to finally decide to announce some stuff with Taiwan, anything like that. There's always that type of fear out there. And then again, there's always that type of fear with just any stock in general. You know, any stock could come out with some bad news at almost any time. Like, Tesla has it all the time. Someone crashed it, or it started, one blew up or something. But either way, there is that slight worry with China. But I think overall, risk-reward ratio-wise and everything, it's setting up great. And I do like that these stocks are coming up off of this lower high right here. I think that's awesome to see, and I really hope that we can continue to see these stocks recovering up in the short term, because if not, and these supports start giving out, it's going to be rough. But then again, the risk reward is so good that you could just get out with a very quick stop loss. So overall, I really like the setup here on these China stocks.
All right, good stuff. So keep a close eye on this one going forward. Tom, looking at the market right now, we're seeing a lot of stocks moving in some pretty crazy ways. We still have a lot of exciting earnings for the week. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we close out?
Yeah, I mean, going into the economic data side of things, there was some ISM services PMI today. Going through the rest of the week, there's some Fed speakers, so be ready for those. I'm sure that they'll talk a lot about rate cuts and maybe the potential to hold off or etc. There was even some talks on it today again, so keep that on the radar. But other than that, Mike, we can pretty much just focus on the good price action for the rest of the week and just keep trading these good momentum plays, right? Keep your eyes on Palantir tomorrow. It's continuing up in after hours, already approaching $19.50. So looks like $20 is on the horizon.
All right, well, guys, we have a lot of exciting things over the next couple days in the market, so stay disciplined, keep your heads up high. As always, keep those stop losses in place, and let's have a great week in the markets. Thanks for watching.